The Washington Commanders' missed tackling problem is more a quality issue than a quantity issue, and it might just be the determining factor in whether or not they get a win in week 2. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, David Harrison, credential member of the media, covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. You can also find me writing for WUSA9.com as well. And I'm here with you every Monday through Friday. And I thank you for coming through for today's episode every day. There's a special thank you to you for coming through every single day. Locked On Commanders is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's episode, during which we're going to go over the final injury report of the week, make our game predictions, and we're going to talk about some pass rush preparation as the Washington Commanders get ready to face the New York Giants. And I'm going to tell you why I think fixing the missed tackle dilemma is the most important part of the Washington Commanders getting a win in week 2. If you want to go beyond the show and get more out of your Locked On Commanders experience, sign up today to be a Locked On Commanders insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. And from there, not only are you going to get live text during events, practices, and games, inside information, invites to bonus content like our insider exclusive Zoom conferences, but you're also going to have the ability to send me your thoughts and your questions via text message. No apps to download, no hashtags, none of that stuff. Just go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to sign up today. Try it out for free for the first 2 weeks. And if you like it, you can stick around. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, which helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. On the crossover Thursday episode with Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants, we go through the 3 things the Washington Commanders must do to get a win in week 2. And those things were, in case you missed it or you just forgot, to tackle and finish their plays, to protect Jayden Daniels. That includes Jayden Daniels protecting himself, and to make your stinking field goal kicks, right? So we're going to go through on this episode. We're going to break those down just a little bit deeper. We're going to talk about why those things are important. We're going to contextualize these things as we get into week 2. And we're starting off with the tackling, because to me, that could be the determining factor. If New York Giants win this game, I think we're going to be able to point back to tackling as part of the reason that they did. Like, there's a lot of things that could happen, but I think if the Giants win this game, absolutely tackling will be an issue still in another week. Now, in week 1, according to Pro Football Focus, the Washington Commanders only missed 9 tackles. Now, I say only because, honestly, going through the rest of the teams, there were some that missed 14, 11, 15. I think the highest I saw was 18 tackles missed in a single game in week 1. And there's actually only a handful of teams that had fewer missed tackles than the Washington Commanders. Some had 5, 4. The New England Patriots were one of the teams that had 4, which is really impressive, but also on brand, right, for the New England Patriots. Tackling and defense has kind of always been their thing. But in fact, the Minnesota Vikings, who beat the New York Giants in week 1, had 10 missed tackles. They actually had more missed tackles than the Washington Commanders. So obviously there's not a direct correlation between missing tackles and losing football games. And that's because the distribution of those missed tackles is absolutely important. And so that's why this missed tackle equation is not just about quantity, right? So again, the Washington Commanders probably came in like they probably came in about top 12 in fewest missed tackles, but it's the quality of those missed tackles that really matter. So I broke down every single missed tackle. I took down the list of every missed tackle that PFF registered for the team. That's Emmanuel Forbes, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Bobby Wagner had 2, Jeremy Chin, Dante Fowler Jr., Dorrance Armstrong Jr., and Frankie Louvu. Those are all the players who had 1 missed tackle. Only Bobby Wagner was credited with 2. Now, full disclosure, going through the film, I actually noticed like another one that I would have counted missed for John Allen. I saw another one for Jeremy Chin that I would have called missed. But going through what PFF called missed tackles, here's what I found out in that distribution. Every single one of them, except for one, was incredibly important. So the very first missed tackle of the game belonged to Mr. Emmanuel Forbes, and it came on 2nd and 6 from the Tampa Bay 34, and the missed tackle that Emmanuel Forbes commits or suffers, whatever you want to call it, turns a 3rd and 4 into a 3rd and 1. So it should have been a 2-yard gain. The Buccaneers should have been facing 3rd and 4. And now we've been through this before, right? A successful play on offense on 2nd down would be gaining 60% of the yards that you need. So, 1st down, you want to gain at least 20% of the yards or 40% of the yards, sorry. 2nd down, you want to gain 60% of the yards to gain. And then 3rd down, you want to gain 100% of the yards to gain. Now, I've seen some who say that it's 50, 70, and 100, right? Bottom line is you want to get a substantial amount of yards per down, right? So on 2nd and 6, right? If you're going by the 60% model, that's over 3 yards, so 3 to 4 yards. If you're going by the 70% model, I'm not going to do the math here quickly in my head, but you're talking 4 or 5 yards, right? 4 yards basically. So either way, you want to gain about 3 or 4 yards. You're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and when Emmanuel Forbes has the opportunity to make contact with the ball carrier, he's about to stop them for a 2-yard gain, which is obviously not a successful play. However, he doesn't make the tackle, and it turns into a 5-yard gain. And the Buccaneers now face 3rd and 1, still in their own end of the field, but it's a much easier conversion to make. They make the conversion, and the drive results in a field goal, giving the Buccaneers a 3-0 lead. So obviously a significant play there that drive ends up leading to points there. So the second missed tackle is actually a twofer. Daron Payne on 2nd and 15 at the Washington 26. So the Buccaneers are already in scoring position, but it's Washington 26 turns a 10-yard sack into a 3rd and 13. So it's 2nd and 15. And instead of it being 3rd and 25, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now get to face 3rd and 13. That's a huge, huge difference. This drive ends up resulting in the second field goal of the game for the Buccaneers. They go up 6-0. If it's 3rd and 25 from the Washington 36-yard line, that is a much different situation. And even if they do end up trying to kick a field goal, it's a longer field goal, all those kinds of things. Of course, you have to stop them on 3rd down, right? And they had that opportunity again. In fact, very next play, 3rd and 13 from the Washington 24, Jonathan Allen, right after Daron Payne's missed sack, he turns a 7-yard sack into an 8-yard gain. He could have had Baker Mayfield for a 7-yard loss, knock it back down to the Washington 31. Instead, Baker Mayfield gains 8 yards, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers get an easier field goal and turn the game into 6-0. So again, they're a little bit more than the first one. The first one, you can still say, okay, got it. It's 3rd and 1, instead of 3rd and 4, but you're still in the Buccaneers end of the field. So there's opportunity there. And I'll agree with you there if you want to go there. But that second one, just immediately you're turning a scoring opportunity into an easier scoring opportunity, and you never want to do that. Next up, Bobby Wagner's first missed tackle of the game comes on 2nd and 12 from the Washington 36, and it turns what should have been a 5-yard loss into a 19-yard gain. Now, on the exact same play, after Bobby Wagner misses his tackle, Jeremy Chin, the safety, misses a tackle and turns what should have been a 3-yard loss. So Bobby Wagner has the opportunity for a 5-yard loss. Jeremy Chin then has the opportunity at a 3-yard loss. Both of them miss. Rachaad White ends up gaining 19 yards. And on the very next play, the Buccaneers score a 17-yard touchdown, and Mike Evans makes it 13-0. Next missed tackle is Dante Fowler Jr., 3rd and 8 from the Washington 11. Could have had a 3-yard sack. Instead, Baker Mayfield's able to throw the ball away, results in a closer field goal. Still would have been in scoring position. 16-7 Buccaneers. Next, you've got Dorrance Armstrong Jr. on a 1st and 10 from the Bucs 46, turns a 5-yard loss into a 9-yard gain. That drive results in a touchdown. Very next play, so 9-yard gain, right? So next play, 2nd and 1 from the Washington 45. Bobby Wagner misses his second tackle of the game, turns a 3-yard gain, still would have been a 1st down, into a 15-yard gain, puts the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in much better scoring position. So again, directly influencing the ability to score points. Then finally, Frankie Louvu on 3rd and 18 from the Buccaneers 40, turns a 15-yard gain. So it's already a big gain, but it turns into a 24-yard gain. That came on 3rd and 18. So understand this. If Frankie Louvu makes the tackle at a 15-yard gain, now the Buccaneers are already up 30-14, right? So they're probably going to punt. They're not going to be in field goal range even with that 15-yard gain. So they're probably going to punt. It's 30-14. You're not out of it because I think it was still a third quarter, but obviously it leads to points, makes the game 37-14. Again, I counted a couple of other ones. How did they happen? Undisciplined form. There were one arm tries to make tackles instead of 2, diving instead of driving through tackles, not playing off your teammate. There were a couple of reps there where you saw a defensive lineman, specifically one that I remember freshly, Jonathan Allen. He's got outside help. If you're looking at gap discipline, he's got outside help from a teammate. What he ends up doing is he ends up trying to take an outside angle on his offensive line that he's going up against. The quarterback squirts up the inside, and now he's just running free with nobody really in front of him. If Jonathan Allen instead moves inside and tries to penetrate inside, if Baker Mayfield is going to avoid him, he's going to do so in the direction of a teammate. That's how you play off of each other. That's, again, something that didn't happen on some of those. So you got to play off your teammate, got to drive through your tackles to get better at tackling. That's what Dan Quinn, Joey Jr. were talking about, being in your spots, finding the right leverage, holding your leverage. Those things have to get better, or else those 9 missed tackles, as significant as they were in week 1, could be just as significant in week 2 against the New York Giants. Also just as significant, protecting Jayden Daniels. However, this week, a little bit more emphasis on the offensive line, even more so than last week against Todd Bowles' the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. We'll talk about why coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find the quality professionals that are right for your role. That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. But LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit another leading job site. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. And on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn knows the small businesses don't always have the resources or the time to hire properly. So they're constantly looking for ways to make it easier for you. 2.5 million small businesses are using LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel because FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we've got a little something different for you this month. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers, you bet $5 and you get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then all you need is a YouTube-based plan. You'll be able to watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. So get your Google account, have a current form of payment, and you can cancel that at any time. And if that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it for FanDuel's double your winnings for all Sunday, September 15th games, as long as you make pregame money line bets. Profit Boost will be live starting Thursday, September 12th. So view your account page and learn more about your boost. The Washington Commanders are currently 1.5-point favorites in week 2 against the New York Giants. That line is staying pretty steady. So hit that or hit any other line you want to. Hit the money line, and you can get that bonus, and you can get 3 weeks of NFL Sunday tickets. So just go to FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Protecting Jayden Daniels is going to be an important thing every single week, but kind of like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week, this week there's going to be a particular challenge that I think the Washington Commanders are going to need to live up to. Thanks for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or your first view today and every single day. Also, make sure you check out the new Locked On NFL because it's here and it's 2 shows every single day. First up, the Madman Tyler Rowland's going to kick off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then you can stop by the barbershop every afternoon with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. You can find me every Wednesday afternoon talking with Tony. You can also add in the Locked On local experts, and you'll get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's now twice per day. Protecting Jayden Daniels obviously is going to be important every single week. No, we're not going to talk about it to this extent every single week. But look, if it continues to be a problem, or if it starts to be a bigger problem, or we continue seeing top shelf pass rushes, then we're going to continue talking about it. So the only way we're going to talk about this next week when the Cincinnati Bengals game is approaching is if this offensive line just does not protect Jayden Daniels in week 2, because the Cincinnati Bengals don't have near the pass rush reputation from a defensive coordinator standpoint as the Buccaneers did, and they don't have guys like Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns on their roster. Don't want to disrespect the Bengals pass rushers, but they're just simply not considered top shelf like these guys are. So maybe we can find another thing to talk about next week. But this week, we are going to continue talking about protecting Jayden Daniels. We talked enough about his running, his need to slide. People don't like the combat role. I get it, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how to defend the New York Giants pass rush. The Commanders' offensive line last week was credited with 6 pressures, 2 of them from right tackle Andrew Wiley, 1 of them from running back Austin Eckler, 1 from left tackle Brandon Coleman, 1 from left tackle Cornelius Lucas, because they both played, and 1 from left guard Nick Allegretti. Brandon Coleman, the rookie, in his NFL debut, had the worst pass blocking grade of the bunch, 44.9. That is gross. It's also going to get better. I'm pretty confident. Andrew Wiley had the second lowest, followed by Nick Allegretti. So what that tells you is the left tackle, left guard, right tackle, which is pretty much what we all said were going to be the suspect parts of this offensive line. They were the suspect parts of this offensive line. Cornelius Lucas had the highest blocking grade, pass blocking grade, which actually leads me to believe that Cornelius Lucas is probably going to start this weekend over Brandon Coleman, because Brandon Coleman's still on the injury report, still getting on the mend. And as we've seen, they've been uber conservative about whether or not they're going to start him, play him, all those things. So I just have that kind of feeling that Cornelius Lucas probably going to start this game. I do think Brandon Coleman, again, will get some reps. However, additionally, when Cornelius Lucas and Nick Allegretti were on the field together, they played 26 dropbacks together, and they looked pretty solid. I saw one of them that PFF may have called a pressure, but it was a 6-man rush by the Buccaneers. Both tackles were occupied, so they had free rushers off the edge. There's only one back in the backfield to help. Zach Ertz could have chipped the guy on the left side, didn't chip. Again, I don't know. That may just not have been the call, and that's not my business. But bottom line is, if that was called a pressure on Cornelius Lucas, kind of an unfair pressure on Cornelius Lucas. But really, pretty solid game overall for the veteran. 8 times Brandon Coleman and Nick Allegretti were on the field together on a drop back. The very first drop back that they faced together, Jayden Daniels had to evade pressure on a missed block by Brandon Coleman. Now, fortunately, Jayden Daniels was able to turn that bad boy into like a 19-yard gain. So it turned out pretty well, but Brandon Coleman completely missed. KJ Britt coming in, basically lured out a little bit outside by Antoine Winfield Jr. and didn't have his head on a swivel, so he didn't see KJ Britt coming in. Nick Allegretti got pushed back a few times when he and Coleman were lined up next to each other. Not necessarily correlated, right? But again, you never want to kind of discount the possibility that like he's playing next to a guy where he's like, maybe I got to do more. Maybe I got to compensate. So again, it's certainly a possibility, but hard not to notice that Nick Allegretti getting pushed around a little bit more when he's playing next to Brandon Coleman than Cornelius Lucas, even when they're not double teaming guys. Alternately, the highest pass rush grade for the New York Giants in week 1, of course, came from Dexter Lawrence. He's the stud defensive lineman there, mostly lined up at the nose or in the left side A gap or the 0, 1, or 2 eye tech on the left side of the defensive line, so the right side of the offensive line. A couple times he got some 3 tech reps in there, which means he'll mostly be going up against center Tyler Biadasz, right guard Sam Cosmi, and right tackle Andrew Wiley. Though, if the Giants think they can get a win on the opposite side of the line against Allegretti or against Coleman or Lucas, they'll be willing to do that because they can't move him around. Brian Burns bounced around all day long. I'm pretty sure his snaps were almost dang near right down the middle, left side, right side, all those things. So Brian Burns is going to be a guy that Tyler Biadasz, Jayden Daniels, all of them, they're going to need to identify him beforehand and then just kind of buckle up and get ready to face Dexter Coleman. But as we talked about on yesterday's episode, not a lot of blitzes, mostly 4-man rushes from the Giants. So if you get the communication right and you get the blocking right and you can hold up at the point of attack, then there is a possibility that this team can be successful in keeping the Giants, that is, from getting early pressure. Don't be surprised if you see Brandon Coleman on the right side a little bit more this week than you did last week because of Andrew Wiley's struggles. If he struggles and if they start using Dexter Lawrence against him or if they start comboing, I mean, if I'm the Giants, I'm putting Dexter Lawrence as like a 3 tech on one side, and I'm putting Brian Burns right outside of him, and I'm making that offensive line block both those dudes on the exact same side of the field as much as I can, and I'm moving them left, right, I'm shifting them, I'm twisting them, I'm doing all kinds of craziness with them. It'd be a lot of fun to scheme up rushes for those two guys. So don't be surprised if you see Brandon Coleman in there. If Andrew Wiley struggles early, you might see Brandon Coleman and Cornelius Lucas on the field together at the same time. And then finally, our final, what they have to do to win this game for Washington, make your field goals. Austin Seibert was brought in here for a reason. He's the 5th kicker on this roster. Just make your kicks, bro. Especially the rookie quarterback, man. You can't leave any points out there on the field. So Austin Seibert, make your kicks. Not a lot to break down all of that. But we've got a little bit more to talk to, including team captains for this game, final injury report, and our weekly recap of Locked On Commanders coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members, including yours truly. It's the easiest and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. It's not you against me. It's not me against you. We're all just playing against the numbers. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard will get you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. It's a fun app that makes to make your picks on. It's been part of my weekly NFL routine since we were first introduced to them a couple years ago. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code Locked On NFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code Locked On NFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed by Prize Picks. Run your game. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, we're going to dive into team captains, injury reports, and we'll recap the week of programming here on the Locked On Commanders podcast. Starting off with the team captains, everything we've just talked about basically explains why the team captains are who they are this weekend. So if you haven't already heard, Tyler Biadasz, the center, Frankie Louvu, linebacker, and Percy Butler, safety, are your team captains. Tyler Biadasz, we just went over the importance of blocking up that Giants defensive line and pass rush, especially against Dexter Lawrence, especially against Brian Burns. But Kayvon Thibodeau certainly has some potential. And don't be surprised if you see the New York Giants defensive coordinator who came from Tennessee dial up blitzes at a little bit of a higher rate than he's known for. In Tennessee, he was only blitzing about 19% of the time. Last week, blitzed about 17% of the time. So pretty much stayed kind of even there. Would not be surprised to see that number hit like closer to 25% of the time in week 2 as they try to pressure that offensive line, try to pressure that rookie quarterback as quickly as possible. Frankie Louvu, linebacker, the emphasis on tackling all week long. Frankie Louvu is a guy who's expected to be a big impact player. He had more of an impact than the 4 tackles in the stat box show, but that's another reason why I think Frankie Louvu is a tackler or is a captain this weekend. And then Percy Butler, he might be a little bit of the surprise one, but competing, man. That's what this team is all about, is competing. And last weekend, Percy Butler got on the field for about 28 snaps, if I remember correctly. But he was in the box. He was lined up deep. He was on the perimeter. He got a tackle for loss, another tackle near the goal line, or was part of another like gang tackle near the goal line. Had the 3rd highest PFF grade, if you're into PFF grades, behind Jamin Davis, Noah Igbenogany. Of course, Jamin Davis, not a lot of snaps, but did some good stuff with him. So Percy Butler, man, you go back and watch the film and you completely understand why he's a team captain this weekend. It's a message. It's a message to this whole team. You're going to get the praise if you put in the work. And Percy Butler absolutely put in the work for his team. In fact, a couple of his tackle for loss, attacking tackle, not getting close to the guy and then kind of stutter stepping and trying to do this crap. Like, just get in there, man, make the tackle. That's exactly what this team wants to see out of their guys. So those 3 guys, your team captains, I think it fits the narrative. I mean, again, and the great thing is when you kind of align, right? I gave you the 3 things that this team had to do to win before the team captains were announced. You look at the team captains, you go, you know what? Those 3 guys align with the 3 things this team needs to do to win this weekend. So it matches perfectly. Final injury report for the week for the Washington Commanders. As we've been talking about, Emmanuel Forbes obviously not going to play in this game. He is the only one that has been ruled out. Questionable is Johnny Jerzon Newton with that foot. Did practice on Thursday in pads, did practice on Friday. I personally don't believe he's going to play, but he certainly could. That's not a report. That's not inside information. That's just kind of my gut feeling, is I don't think he's going to play. So I don't expect him to play. Quan Martin popped up on the injury report on Friday as a limited participant with a hamstring. When we went down to the practice field Friday, I looked over to the side field where the injured players work out. I saw Quan Martin over there. He was doing some runs, doing some backpedaling, doing some transitions. Looked pretty okay. And I was just like, man, please tell me this dude is just doing some extra work and he's not actually going to be on this injury report. He is on the injury report. So we will see what happens there. Cleveland Farrell has a knee issue. He did not practice on Friday. He is also questionable. He was dealing with the knee issue all through training camp and preseason. So I think, if he can go, Cleveland Farrell will go. So we'll see there. The interesting thing, or sad thing perhaps, about Quan Martin, with Emmanuel Forbes out, if Quan Martin can't go and neither Chris Rodriguez or Andre Jones Jr. are elevated from the practice squad, the Washington Commanders will have no members of its 2023 NFL draft class on the field on Sunday, if that happens. So interestingly enough. Flipping over to the New York Giants side of things, they've got 3 players out of this game. Nick McLeod, cornerback, Darius Masau, linebacker, and Gunnar Olszewski, wide receiver. All 3 of those guys are out. I know Patricia Traina said like Nick McLeod is a little bit of concern. Like that's, more of the impact player. Darius Slayton has apparently cleared concussion protocol. He's got no game designation. And Malik Neighbors, limited practice on Thursday with a knee issue, was a full participant on Friday. And Brian Dable said he has no anticipation of any issues there for Malik. So Malik Neighbors will be out there. And, look, Noah Igbenogany, Michael Davis are going to get opportunities to replace Emmanuel Forbes on Sunday. I wouldn't be surprised to see Percy Butler get some reps out there as well. So my prediction for this game, I'm still going Washington Commanders, and I'm thinking 24-21 as the final score. So if my score comes true, Washington Commanders will cover that spread. Use that information as you would like. Looking back at the week here on Locked On Commanders, our first episode following the week 1 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. After my live post-game episode, I gave you 3 reasons to not hit the panic button, including how good Jayden Daniels was in relation to other rookie quarterbacks over the last 10 years, and the fact that he did it against a playoff caliber defense and perhaps the hardest defensive coordinator to face in an NFL debut. Then we went through the film. We broke down Jayden Daniels' above average performance, and we also broke down and graded the performances of linebacker Frankie Louvu and cornerback Emmanuel Forbes. After that, we debuted our second crossover episode, I should say, of the season. Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants coming in to go over the biggest storylines of this week 2 matchup and more. And then just before this episode, we covered the impact of Emmanuel Forbes' thumb injury and surgery, Malik Neighbors' addition to the Giants injury report, and more from this contest, leading to today, our final look at the New York Giants and the Washington Commanders and our game prediction. And that is going to wrap it up. The next time you hear from me will be following the game. I will be on the surface of the Northwest Stadium field live after the game and after press conferences, after locker room sessions, all that stuff. So make sure you come back for that in the next episode of Locked On Commanders. In the meantime, if you have any questions or comments, all you got to do is text them to me by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. For your next listen, check out Locked On NFL. Madman Tyler Rowland kicks you off in the morning, and then the afternoon, you get the cool vibes of real NFL talk with the barber, Tony Wiggins. It's the all-new Locked On NFL, and it's twice per day. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. Every dayers, thanks for coming through every day like you do. Until we speak again, if you're out and about, especially if you're going to game, please be safe, be kind, and I will see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.